So, good morning, everybody. We're just going to allow a few minutes for everybody to join, to be admitted. And in the meantime, just take a moment to just find a little bit of comfort in where you're sitting. So make sure you're comfortable. Find a little bit of presence in yourself. Perhaps bring some attention to the space that you're in. Often it's quite difficult being in a Zoom meeting because suddenly all our attention goes into the screen. So let's just have a moment to bring ourselves back to ourselves. It can be quite nice to feel your groundedness in your chair. So if you're sitting in the chair, just take a moment to really feel yourself sitting on the chair, the points of contact. Perhaps it's your legs, your back, your feet on the floor. And this is quite a nice image that we've put up here of this stunning wisteria. This time of year, it grows so beautifully. So maybe take a nice deep breath in of this wisteria and allow the exhalation to just leave. As you imagine that if we weren't in this virtual world, we could be sat in this gorgeous location, breathing in the blossom. Perhaps allow yourselves to feel the cool breeze on your skin as well. And be sure to have all the ingredients by your side. It doesn't matter if you haven't got all of them. And then we can take another moment to really breathe in this lovely blossom. And as we breathe in the smell of this blossom, we can allow anything that we're bringing to the session to kind of go into the background. So we've all had our morning with its ups and downs. We can just let that rest and bring our attention into the moment. And harmony is at the essence of these workshops. And what a better way to start by allowing ourselves to just feel a little bit more harmonious. And then I could just allow yourselves to just be aware really of your physical presence whilst your eyes are absorbing this virtual workshop. And by that I mean you can feel the presence of your body on the chair. You can bring the attention to your spine that actually rises up. You can think of it coming out of the top of your head, rising up to the ceiling.
So my name is John Hunter. I'm part of the Harmony in Health team. I've been learning and practicing mind-body disciplines for some 40 years. Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, and my special area of study is the Alexander technique. So we're pleased today to welcome people who came to us via the Harmony Project and also via the College of Medicine. We're Harmony in Health, which is the College of Medicine's link with the Harmony Project. And the Harmony Project was inspired by the Prince of Wales's book, Harmony, A New Way of Looking at the World. So in Harmony in Health, we're looking at health through the prism of harmony. We're exploring ways in which the principles of harmony, the cyclical nature of life, interconnectedness, interdependence, diversity, the oneness of everything, also apply in our inner world, in particular through mind-body disciplines and traditional medicine. In ancient times, doctors saw health as a state of balance and harmony within the organism and in relation to the environment. As knowledge became more and more specialized, we seem to have lost this sense of the whole. Increasingly, people are looking to recover what was valid in traditional medicine without rejecting the advances of science. Our main presenter today is Dr. Eleni Siompanu, who has studied practiced medicine from many different perspectives, as an oncologist, a palliative care consultant, a nutritionist, and an Ayurvedic practitioner. And she'll be assisted by Sarah Karushi, who's a musician, a dancer, and an Alexander technique teacher. Then I'm going to hand over now to Eleni.
I'm the lead for the Harmony in Health project, and I'm also consultant in palliative medicine in a hospice in Surrey. For the last 30 years, as well as being a doctor, I've studied ancient wisdom traditions, mainly Hippocratic medicine, and as John said, Ayurveda, together with modern nutritional medicine. I also have a long history of growing plants and herbs, and I combine plants from my native country, Greece, with more local herbs found in the British countryside. So, why should we be interested in taste? Is it a question of pleasure or having a nice flavor in a food, or is it more than that? We know that touch and sight and hearing are more celebrated senses because somehow they're connected to more creative art. They are connected to culture and philosophy, poetry. But the senses of smell and taste somehow are relegated to more basic needs of the body. Some people consider them to be primitive. However, no one can deny their functional importance in sustaining life because they help us to distinguish between what is nourishing and what is or can be poison. You can tell when the milk in your fridge has gone off by smelling it and tasting it. But also taste has become connected to the COVID pandemic. Many people who have been infected, people I know myself, report a persisting loss of smell and taste. And we don't know when the test of taste will come back. So I need to make a point here that for us to be able to taste anything, we need the sense of smell as well. So people who have anosmia, those who haven't got good sense of smell, they also haven't got good sense of taste. The two are connected. One sense is dependent on the other. So this is how in this workshop we see how the interconnectedness is in everything. So if you can start the slideshow, please, John. So Richard Dunn, who is joining us in this workshop, is the education lead in the Harmony project and a head teacher who's put together these principles of harmony. We, in a way, all these principles can be seen in everything in life, but in a way today we are looking more at the interconnectedness and interdependence. So a virus from the external environment that can affect humans in a complex way, with many questions as to the reasons behind the emergence of this virus. Then the question is, how can we be healthy in an unhealthy planet? So if we have an understanding, which we have now, it's obvious in our face, of these connections between microorganisms, animals, and humans, and what is needed to be healthy, then we know what we need to do. And when we get ill, what do we need to be healed? For Harmony in Health group, the question is, can we be healthy if our mind is disturbed? And we see that physical body, mind, and emotions are connected. And many people who've recovered from the COVID infection are traumatized in their emotions, and they still are not really healthy. So next slide. So as John said, we are looking at, in Harmony in Health, we want to find a new way of looking at health. In the West, we don't really have a definition of health. We say we are healthy when we're not ill, but is that right? There are many people walking around with many issues who pretend to be healthy. In many perennial philosophies and ancient medical traditions, including Hippocratic medicine and Ayurveda, health is seen as the harmony of man's elemental components. When there is an imbalance, a disturbance of this harmony, then we are unhealthy. Next slide, please. So I'm sure you see now the interconnectedness of everything. So we can look at it from the perspective of taste. Taste is connected to other senses. We learn to eat food and appreciate it by looking at it, smelling it, touching it with our hands, sensing its texture in our hands and in our mouth, and then eventually tasting it. And we're going to talk about 6 main tastes. In the literature, there is discussion, what are the tastes? And perhaps in other animals can sense more than the 6 tastes I'm going to talk about today, but we're not going to talk about that. So the main tastes are sweet, sour, and salty, pungent, bitter, and astringent. But we can't really talk about tastes without talking about types, because we see that types of people, that different types are attracted to different food tastes and textures, which is why some people say, I have a sweet tooth, or I have simple tastes. Some people like raw vegetables, seeds, and nuts. Others like eggs and meat and slurpy food. So why is that? So today we want to invite you to look at taste in a new way, which at the same time is very old, ancient, and it's based on traditional systems. A new way that connects taste with individual types, but also with the qualities of foods. And I'm going to briefly touch on it today, although it's a whole new workshop on itself, the power of foods. We want to connect taste with the effects of herbs and spices, and with a key element of our function, which I won't have time to talk about today, which is digestion, and with the environment, how the environment affects us, the foods we eat, the tastes of the foods, and their effect on us. So when we look at taste in that way, we see that our attraction to some of them, in preference to others, has to do with our individual type, which type has to do with the basic elements that we're made of. Modern science speaks of atoms, DNA, and genes instead of elements. When we look at the world through the principle of elements, we can appreciate that the foods we eat are made of the same elements that we are made of. And these elements give a specific taste and power to the food, the herb, or the spice. So again, in order to explain the different tastes and our individual preferences and the effect they have on us, we need to consider first and foremost what we're made of, the elements that make up everything that exists in the universe. So next slide, please. This is key to our understanding of health and harmony. So I'm going to look at the 5 elements from the point of view of Ayurveda and Hippocratic medicine. This is what I've studied, but there's also Chinese medicine. All the big traditions have more or less similar elements. And these big elements are the building blocks of the universe and everything in it. They are air, ether, fire, water, and earth. Ether is space. Space allows everything to happen. And space is connected to sense of hearing. Air. Air is movement, and it is connected to the sense of touch. Fire. Fire is transformation and illumination, and it is connected to the sense of seeing. Water is lubrication, and it is connected to the sense of taste. Dry mouth doesn't have taste. Earth provides structure, form, and stability, and it is connected to the sense of smell. And I just want to pay a little more attention to the first element, which is ether, space. First came logos. Space is everywhere and connects all things. Space is between galaxies and stars and planets. Within the body, we have space between organs. We have space around our brain, around our lungs, the tubes, the bronchi in our lungs. Our heart has space, all the organs, the bones. There is space between and within the cells, between and within the atoms. When we understand this, perhaps we are more attracted to learning more about the laws of universe, of nature. Astronomy may become essential for our understanding of our place on Earth and within ourselves. It was interesting to read that in all ancient medical systems, doctors were required to study astronomy, the laws of the universe. This allowed them to understand when diseases would happen, how people were affected by the movements of planets, of the change of seasons, of the change of airs, and in a way to predict the future, to know when they went to a place what illnesses were going to prevail. Some call ether energy, and in a way everything is energy, and everything is connected to everything else through what we could call fields. So if we perceive this, when we bend down to cut a herb or reach up to cut an elderflower from a tree bush, we feel the need to thank the plant for what it's giving us and to take only as much as we need, not more, not to waste. In some traditions, people who collect herbs for medicinal purposes always say a prayer and thank the earth for what they take. And they leave some behind for the plant to regenerate. When you know that the trees experience pain and have memories and that three parents live together with their children, then you can no longer just chop them down and disrupt their lives. It's something I read in the book, The Hidden Life of Trees. So when you spend time in nature, when you grow plants and trees and share them with others, when I go out in the garden and experience the magic of the sound of the air going through the acacia tree, when we smell the rain on the earth, we feel the connection with the elements, with the big elements, and then we recognize we are also nature. Next slide, John. So I want to briefly talk about types. We did a workshop before, and we will need to do another one in the future if people are interested. And again, I'm going to use the system of Ayurveda, but all traditions have a way of dividing types. So in every human being, all these 5 elements I spoke of are combined in different ways, and they create 3 basic principles of energies, which in Ayurveda are called Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. In other traditions, they are defined as humors, as temperaments, hot, cold, dry, moist, or sanguine, choleric, melancholic, and phlegmatic. So these divisions show that one principle is heating, fire, the other is cooling, water and earth, the third is drying, air. And quickly to give you an idea, the bodily air principle, and also to say that we all have combinations of these 3 energies. We are born with a specific proportion of the energies. Everyone has Vata, Pitta, and Kapha in them, but some is more than the other. So Vata regulates breathing and mobility and the central nervous system. Vata people are creative, they are poets, they are writers, they're also restless, they like to talk a lot, they are prone to insomnia, they like to travel. The fire component, the fire energy, is known as Pitta, which regulates the digestion and assimilation processes in the body. So Vata collects ideas, but Pitta is the one that processes them and combines them together. Pitta people are quite ambitious. They are the ones that won't give up. They are the ones that organize and put things together. They are the leaders. So they are needed. And then the earth and water component is known as Kapha, and water is responsible for lubrication, but also formation of mucus. And Kapha people are the loving people. They tend to have more weight. They like to cook. They like to look after the family, look after other people. They are caring. They can also hold on to things. They can be a bit stubborn. They are prone to being overweight. There are pros and cons. They can become depressed and melancholic. Next slide. So the same basic 5 elements, which create types in different combinations and proportions, are also contained within each substance, whether it is a herb or a spice or fruit or anything. And their combination determines which taste this food will have. So sweet is a combination of earth and water. Coconut water, for example, is sweet, and sour is earth and fire, salty, water and fire, pungent, fire and air, bitter is air and ether, and astringent is air and earth. They're difficult to remember when you first see them, but the importance of knowing them is that knowing also the fundamental principle that like increases like. So if we are predominantly Pitta, fire people, then we are attracted to things that have more fire in them. And if we keep eating them and doing these kind of things, then we are going to become imbalanced, disharmonious, and eventually, obviously, ill. If we are predominantly Vata people, so we like things that are dry, that are coarse in texture, and we move a lot. If we do these things, which are what our nature is, but if we do too much of them, then we will become disharmonious, imbalanced. So in another way, we can say opposites help to balance our excesses. Next slide, John, please. Even tears flow according to predominant type and differ in taste. So Vata tears are cold and bitter and have to do with loneliness and fear and come from the inside of the eye. Pitta tears are hot and sour and salty and have to do with anger and hate and frustration, which is the kind of emotions people have when they are Pitta imbalanced. Kapha tears are sweet, have to do with love and compassion, and it's what Kapha people have a lot in them, love and compassion. So imagine know these things in education, being taught them as a young human being. My daughter, when she was in year 6, primary medical school, she went for a few lessons to the local secondary school, and she came back one day and she had drawn this, which they had taught her basically the 5 elements and how they are connected to our organs and how they are connected to different humors and types. And she came back and she drew it. And if as a young person you have knowledge of this, then you have knowledge of the tastes of different foods, then you can be independently make the right choices perhaps for yourself, instead of depending on a doctor to give you a pill, which is not enough. Doctors only see us once in a while. We live in our body all the time. So next slide, John. So specifically for herbs and spices, there are so many, and people study for years to learn about them. But I wanted to bring a few of them today to talk about them. Again, we need to remember that each herb and spice contains all the 5 elements in different proportions, but some are more dominant. And the dominance of the specific element gives the specific taste that this food has and gives it the specific action. So as I said earlier, water element gives sweet taste. Sweet taste is responsible for increasing blood. Too much sweet taste can lead to sluggish, underactive thyroid and obesity. But also, sweet taste is the most important taste. It's the vital essence of life. It is love, which is why we call someone honey, that we don't call them lemon or salt, we call them honey. So such foods are honey, licorice, dates, maple syrup. But today I ask you to bring cinnamon. And if you have it in front of you, if you want to have a taste of it. Now, cinnamon is not only sweet, it's also pungent and bitter. But one of its tastes is sweet. Not many herbs taste and spices taste sweet. Licorice is another one, which is also bitter. So cinnamon is very good for all sorts of things to help in our body. If you have half a teaspoon of cinnamon in a little bit of hot water after a main meal or 2 main meals, this helps to regulate your blood sugar and your cholesterol, amongst other things, and your digestion. So earth and fire together leads to sour taste. Sour taste helps in digestion and stimulates appetite. Hence the habit in some Mediterranean countries, they eat pickles at the beginning of a meal, or they eat a small salad that has vinegar in it, or lemon. So I've got here lime, which is a better thing to have for my type, which has a lot of pitta in it, because it's also bitter. Pitta people go towards sour taste a lot, and they can overdo it. If they want to balance themselves, they need to have more of a bitter element in their food. So lime, which is more ancient than lemon, has the bitter taste as well. So if you taste a bit of it, a small quantity of sour food, which is in lemon and grapefruit and apple cider vinegar or in vitamin C, helps to reduce mucus congestion. But we need balance again. Too much of it has the opposite effect and can lead to congestion, pulmonary congestion, and diarrhea and edema. So combining water and fire results in salty taste. Salt is laxative. You can have a little bit of it. It can weaken the kidneys and it can cause water retention. Another herb that has salt is celery, seaweed as well. A little salt goes a long way and can enhance the flavor of food and all the other tastes. But too much of it will destroy the effect of other tastes because salt is too strong. But also salt can enhance spirit and give you confidence, courage, enthusiasm. I have a friend who often goes on a salt-free diet. And if you try it, which I don't advise you to do, if you try it for a month, you will be sure to become dull, depressed, and lose your creativity. Salt is important. So pungent taste. Pungent is the result of predominance of ether and air, which improves digestive power. It's very, very important taste to have a little bit of it. It cleanses the mouth, it cleans the sinuses and removes fat from the body. Many of the spices that we have in them, especially the pungent taste. So black pepper, ginger. So if you have ginger, you can taste it a little bit. Ginger is not just pungent, but has other tastes in them. Mustard and garlic. Garlic is also very pungent. Many of the herbs and spices have this taste. but too much of it can make you excessively hungry and cause heartburn. And psychologically, pungent taste helps the mind to be sharp, focused, attentive, but too much of it can increase anger, irritability, jealousy, and competitiveness. I want to say something about garlic, which is an important spice to have for various viruses, including COVID virus. We used to have it and make it use it in a soup, rice soup, in which you'll put garlic and ginger. But to keep its therapeutic healing properties, you need to cut it, slice it, and leave it for 10 minutes before you put it in the pot to cook. There have been many scientific studies in peer-reviewed journals that showed that if you chop garlic as well as the other allium products like chives and leeks and onions, if you chop them and put them immediately in the pot, they keep their nice taste and smell, but they don't keep their therapeutic properties, which are many of them. So do as the Chinese people do, which is cut them and leave them for at least 10 minutes before you cook them. Bitter taste. Excess combination of air and ether gives a bitter taste. And example is the coffee and tea, which we will try in a minute, but also rosemary has bitter taste, which if you want, you can try a little bit. Cumin. Other herbs like turmeric is a very well-known one. Dandelions, sage. Again, many herbs and spices are bitter, and bitter taste in itself may not be pleasant, but if you put a little bit of it in the food, it promotes all the other flavors. In the West, we like coffee and tea. They're very popular because they are bitter, and bitterness lacks from our food, the normal food that we cook. But many of bitter, too much bitter, can weaken the liver and the pancreas and the spleen. And psychologically, if you have too much bitter taste, then Vata people need to be careful because they like bitter tastes a lot. Then they can become cynical and prone to isolation. But bitter taste also makes your mind celibate and helps you become more self-aware and turn the attention inwards. So it's a very important taste. And then we have astringent, which is air and earth, and you can find it in raw quince, if you ever tasted raw quince, or unripe persimmon, or in the pomegranate, in the turmeric as well, and golden seal, which is very important herb. But most raw vegetables are astringent. So astringent is decongestant. It stops bleeding and can treat diarrhea. But again, Vata people who are drawn towards astringent need to be careful because too much of this taste can cause constipation and reduce fertility and sex drive. And psychologically, too much of it can create insomnia, anxiety, fear, depression, nervousness. But the right amount of it can make your mind collected and helps you be more grounded, because it doesn't only have the air element in it, it also has the earth element. So black pepper is pungent, going through the list. Bay leaves are astringent. So the next slide, and John. As I just said, as guiding principle, let's remember the aphorism which was written at the entrance of the Temple of Delphi, all in good measure. All excess is hostile to nature. So if we're going to make changes, let's make them little by little. If you're drinking too much coffee, reduce it gradually. If you're not having any salt, reintroduce it slowly. And next slide. Before we go into our breakout rooms, I would like to ask Sarah to give us an exercise of attention, presence in drinking coffee or tea. We can apply this to anything, but today we're going to apply it to drinking our bitter cup of coffee or tea. In a way what some people do when they stop and they return to the present moment in silence or in prayer. They bless their food and express gratitude. It can be an act of compassion, as something had to be sacrificed for me to have my food. And it can be an act of gratitude for what I'm about to receive, an act of stillness so that I can receive it with attention and intention.
So, as Eleni said, we're just going to do a very simple guided exercise. Be sure to have your cup of tea or coffee. It's probably a bit lukewarm now, but that's okay. Don't worry about it. And just have it near you so that you'll be able to receive it. And then I invite you to just find a bit of comfort in whether it's a chair you're sitting on or a sofa, or even the floor if you're cross-legged. Take a moment to just find a little bit of comfort. Place the cups down for now. Good. And before I run through this exercise, I thought I'd share this little teddy that I have. I use this a lot when I guide people through kind of mindful meditation or preparation. And it's very good if any of you are teachers working with children, or if you are parents with young children at home, if you want to introduce this idea of coming into a bit more harmony in yourself before eating, before drinking, at meal times, you can have a teddy there and you give the instructions to the teddy, and you'll find that as the teddy begins to find some comfort in where he's sitting, maybe he places his hands on his laps. Maybe he makes sure that his head is nice and balanced on his spine. Maybe he makes sure that his back is nice and upright and soft and rising up, and his feet are just resting. You'll find that as you give instructions to the teddy, the children will just become a little bit more aligned and a bit more balanced. So he's here. And the first thing you can do is bring attention to the weight of your body. So if you're sitting on a chair like I am, I like to feel the connection of my legs, the parts of my legs that I can feel touching the chair. And I just bring some attention to that space, and I allow the weight of my body to actually connect with the chair as I begin to almost descend into the chair. By that I don't mean collapsing into the chair, I mean just an allowing of myself to be present in the chair. If there's a back to the chair and I have a connection with my back, do the same. Allow your back to feel the chair, feel the presence of the chair. And like the Pink Panther, I'm just going to rest my hands, palms facing up on my legs. And again, I feel that point of contact with the back of my hands on my legs. And if my feet are touching the floor, have a moment of sensing the floor under my feet. And in a moment of space, I can perhaps bring my attention to my breathing. Just allow your eyes to close very, very softly. You take your eye of attention into your breathing. Can I notice an in-breath? Can I notice an exhalation? I'm not wanting to influence my breath, I just wish to notice it. Can I still notice the points of contact I have with the chair, or the sofa, or the floor? Can I notice the point of contact of the back of my hand with my legs? And then I just allow what I call a wave of attention to spread through my body, releasing and undoing anything unnecessary, any holdings or any tensions I may have. I start at the head. I release the weight of the head. Release the neck. I allow any thoughts that I have that may be distracting me to just pass by like a cloud. And in the space between those clouds, I go down to my shoulders, arms, fingers. Allow this wave to travel through your torso, releasing, undoing, settling. I may notice I'm distracted by my mind and my thoughts. That's okay, I just turn the volume down a little bit. I free up a bit of attention. I travel down my legs, where I find my feet and the connection with the ground. I'm able to softly, in my own time, allow my eyes to very softly open. And I allow those eyes to receive the impression of the camera, the video, the iPad or laptop, whatever it is you have. But I maintain a sense of myself in my body. And in contrast to the weight of my body going down, I just allow this lightness to also be received from the ground, up through my body, right up through the spine, through the top of the head. And I allow myself to be a bit movable, so I'm not stuck in this presence in my body. I can still have a bit of movement in my body. And then we have this cup of tea or coffee in front of us, so I invite you to just notice any feeling that arises in yourself, any reaction to the thought of drinking the tea or the coffee. Just register it and notice it. And then I invite you to pick the cup up, but in a slightly different way to normal. Our usual experience is quite a habitual experience. We tend to grab with our hands and we grab with our thoughts. So we'd normally just drink it without paying much attention, really. So this time I'd like to invite you to think of the idea that it's your fingers that are going to lead the movement of the arm to pick up the cup. And as you do that, bring your attention to stay in your body. So perhaps you've connected with your back, your breath, or your spine. As your fingers lead. Good, and then just have, I'm going to show you my cup. I'm going to just have this connection with the cup. So at the moment, I'm just placing my hand on the cup. Notice how that feels. Notice what thoughts arise. Am I reacting? Do I already want to drink it? And bring yourself back into yourself, your body. And then I invite you to do the same process in bringing the cup up to take a sip. So instead of the thought of wanting to just drink the tea or coffee leading this movement, I want you to actually think of the hand, the mechanics really, of the fingers bringing the cup towards you. And you're staying nice and quiet in your body and in your mind. And go ahead, take a sip. And then I invite you to just notice whether you drunk it immediately. If you did, that's fine. Notice it going down. Notice the sensation of a drink that we normally just habitually drink. And then bring yourself, place the cup back down, place your hands back on your laps. And see if you can taste the taste of the drink still. And whilst you still taste the taste of the drink, is there still some awareness inside myself? Am I still nicely balanced like him? Or perhaps I've collapsed, in which case I can just bring myself back to myself. And I will finish this exercise by linking it to those lovely 5 elements that Eleni spoke about, the ether. So allow yourself to find a bit of space, a bit of ether within you. Perhaps there's a little bit more space in your torso because you're less collapsed. Perhaps there's a bit more space in your fingers because you brought a bit of attention there. Air, which brings the quality of movement. Am I movable without collapsing? Am I able to be fluid in myself? Fire, which is seeing. Am I able to still stay in myself and receive the impressions and directions from this workshop? Water, we associate with taste. Am I still able to have that lovely taste of that drink in my mouth? Or have I become a bit more lost in my thoughts now? And then the earth is the smell, which is so linked with the taste. Was I able to smell it? The lovely aroma of the coffee or the tea. So I hope you gained something from that. So what we're going to do now is go out into our breakout rooms. If you've not done it before, just follow the instructions. And then we invite you to discuss in the rooms what your experience was of this exercise, and also to have just a general discussion on your thoughts and feelings, or any questions you have about the workshop so far and everything that Eleni has shared with us.
So I'm going to ask the breakout room facilitators just to share some of the comments and impressions that we had. Maybe I'll start with that. Everybody was very quiet after the exercise, Sarah. They were all quite quiet and meditative. And most of the comments were about what a difference it made to the experience of taste when they were more quiet and really giving the attention to that, almost a ritualistic aspect. And so often we don't bring much attention to the how of things that we're engaged with. But it was striking that when we do, it changed everything about that experience of having a cup of tea and the taste of it. But how difficult it is to try and apply that to more elements of our lives, really. I think those are the main points in our group. So, Sumi, how did you get on? Unmute.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Well, my group were very enthusiastic. I apologise to Pam because we were pulled out of the breakout room, but basically they found the whole session incredibly inspiring and loved learning about all the different herbs and also being so in the moment with things. And we sort of discussed a little bit about how that sort of enjoyment is almost taken away with everyday life. Like sometimes when you're really busy, a couple of us work as doctors, and we were saying how when you're so busy that you're given that cup of tea, but then a patient goes off, and by the time you get back to your tea, it's gone cold, and you just sort of sip it and just carry on. And so sometimes we really sacrifice the beauty of taste and flavor. Really interesting in the sense of herbs themselves used as to sort of flavor food, but also the medicinal impact of herbs. That was something else we looked into, and also respecting the person who makes the food, you know, and their knowledge and their insight, and also how the elements were linked to the different tastes. I think the group found that really interesting. and they loved Pink Panther, by the way, Sarah. They said they're going to use Pink Panther to do future meditations with their children. So thank you. The group found it a very incredible and insightful session. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, Sumi. And Sarah?
Hi, so we had just as much enthusiasm, but also through a very sort of calm meditative state. We've got one member who does this thing called Lu Jong, which they found through the Harmony in Health website. And it's a Tibetan yoga and meditation practice, which really echoes the 5 elements that you taught us, Eleni. And how fantastic it is for her to hear the same message being reiterated that you said comes from the ancient traditions. We also have a homeopath who was interested in finding out more about the law of similars and contraries that you mentioned, because with the homeopathic angle, it's similar curing as opposed to having something else to counteract it. Perhaps if you could talk a bit about that. We found it very good to have a practical, mindful activity. It brought more meaning to the workshop to actually have some activity, some practical activity. An idea, a question or a suggestion was to maybe have some recipes, some vegetables and food, and maybe a sort of a shared recipe that we could all cook would be nice. It was nice to also have our thought processes guided whilst we drank this cup of tea or coffee, and someone particularly liked the expression that I used, that we normally habitually grab the drink with our hands and our thoughts. That really struck home. Someone else said that when we practice an activity like this mindful way, it brings in the parasympathetic system, which is the calm state that we don't give ourselves a chance to do before we eat. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we all made that effort before we consume anything? Someone works with people, with adults and children with learning needs, and they always have a soft teddy with them, and she never thought to actually incorporate that. And so she's excited about going and using the Pink Panther method. We talked about Zoom disembodying us, and what a great opportunity to have had an embodied activity in a Zoom workshop. And final question is, how do you slow down people who are always in a rush? It seems to be in the system.
Thank you, Sarah. And then Eleni?
Yes, so we talked about slowing down and noticing how important it is, and also about slow learning and how if we start early in schools, then we can, through the years as we grow older, learn about different elements of foods and herbs and spices. We also talked about noticing the geometry in foods, which is interesting, and I'll share a photo afterwards. We talked about our favorite herbs, and a lot was said about nettles and how some of us have been foraging them and how to use them. I want to bring a few more elements. If we go back to the PowerPoint presentation, some books to recommend to have at home. I mean, there are lots of books out there, very nice books, including some written by one of our guests today who is joining our workshop, Michael McIntyre. But the ones I have with me today, next slide, John, please, is one of the Spice Health Heroes, which is a wonderful and easy cookery book with lots of information about spices in them, by someone called the Dancing Chef. Natasha was a dancer in her previous life. Another book is Ayurvedic Cooking for Self-Healing by this Ayurveda doctor who has written amazing books, Vasant Land. And I have this book, Pleasure of Herbs, which is such a pleasure to read the stories in there. There's so much about herbs to know. And then a more medical and more modern book with scientific studies in them about foods, How Not to Die, which is a very interesting title. Next slide, John. So briefly, I want to comment about the power, what we call the power of foods, which is what the qualities of foods. And what herbs and spices and cooking do is they help to reduce or increase the power of foods. So what do I mean by power of foods? Simply, some foods are easier to digest than others. If we were to eat raw wheat, we would suffer, which is why we process it, we cook it. And cooking and digestion are absolutely key to what is absorbed in the body. You can eat the best quality organic food, but if you don't cook it properly with the right spices, and if your digestion is not good, then you don't absorb the nutrition. It doesn't nourish you. So digestion is a completely different subject that could be another workshop. So food can be divided as heating or cooling, drying or moistening, light or heavy, depending on the elements in them. Their power depends on many parameters. One of the most important is environment, and in my breakout room, we touched on this a little bit. Mint that grows in this country has different power, different qualities than a mint that grows in Greece, in northern Greece in the mountains, or in Crete where it is dry. The same with vines. A vine that grows in wet soil, shady, is different, has different qualities and different power compared to one that grows in a sunny and dry soil. Animals that are wild and feed on wild fruit bushes and grass and herbs, we have completely different meat, quality of their meat, to animals that eat corn and kept in a restricted environment without much movement. Their elements are affected. So next slide. Oh, and even vessels for cooking influence our end product. So we need to cook our food. And cooking is like making music. To make music, you need different notes to create harmony. You don't just use one note, and if you do, it's a completely different experience. So in cooking, we use all sorts of herbs and spices, and we combine different tastes in order to create something that gives pleasure to the tongue. And if our food gives pleasure to the tongue, then our mind is satisfied. Then we don't go out and seek more pleasure and eat more. So if our food is just mainly sweet, sour and salty, which most Western food is, then we are not satisfied, which is why we eat more. So we need to bring bitter, astringent and pungent into our food, and that happens through herbs and spices. And a well-tuned tongue can distinguish the different tastes, and they give pleasure to both mind and body. And next slide. So an example of how cooking using different tastes, combinations and herbs and spices is appealing is a curry. We all love curry in this country, and a curry is a combination of lots of herbs and spices. And they are not just accidentally put together. There's a lot of ancient knowledge and culture behind creating a curry, which modern medicine now confirms that if you only need to put a little bit of turmeric, 1/4 of a teaspoon in a big curry pot, because you use it with pepper and fat, and these three elements together increase the therapeutic property of the turmeric, and that is the curry, of course. So that's another reason we should be using them. Next slide. So a recipe I wanted to give you today is coriander tea, which is very good. And when autumn and winter comes, it's something that we should be drinking more. To protect myself, because I go to the hospice and we have patients with COVID, and I don't know if I had it, but anyway, I've been drinking coriander tea every day, which is heating. So 3 teaspoons of coriander seeds, 3 slices of French ginger root in 1 cup of water. You boil it for 7 minutes, then you strain it, and once it is a bit cool, you add 1 teaspoon of good honey. Honey shouldn't be heated, it goes off. Next one. So going to Richard's comment about, oh, I missed the last slide anyway, about geometry in foods. I had this photo of borage flower, which is so beautiful and geometric. And of course, borage is very easily grown, and you can eat it. Just a little bit of the leaves, but the flowers are beautiful, decorative, and you can add them to your salad. They can be eaten raw, or you can add them to your gin and tonic, or what other drinks you have. And Persian people, again, dry them, and you can find them in Persian shops. I haven't looked into the qualities and what therapeutic value they have, but I'm sure they do have. So if these things resonate with you and you have something that you would like to offer into our group, Harmony in Health group, join us. Register for our newsletter and for future events. Give us your comments, and we can now share any questions or comments that you would like to add. We'll finish in 10 minutes or so.
Okay, thank you, Eleni. So we do have a little bit of time if there's any more questions. A few people have asked Eleni whether you will share the slides after the event.
Yes, it's too big presentation to do that, but I think what would be of value is to share the list of books, and I'll put together a synopsis of the slides and send it out. Yes, can we do that, John? Is that easy?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, on the recipe.
We can also put them on our Harmony in Health website as well.
Okay.
So,
There were many recipes to share. I just had to choose one today. And I'm sure people have their own recipes that they could share.
yes, somebody's commented that borage flowers contain pyrrolizidine alkaloids, so we are very careful about using them in the herbal profession due to its impact on the liver.
Thank you. Only a little bit then. Everything in good measure.
And Lisa is asking, is ginger good for all Ayurvedic types?
Ginger is too heating, so for those who have too much fire, they need to not take too much of it. It can cause heartburn, and also it's better for those who have too much fire in them to have it after they've eaten, not on an empty stomach. In fact, no one should have ginger on an empty stomach. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Eleni. And Helen is telling us that as a child in the 70s, they said grace before each meal at her school, and that going forward she plans to precede each meal with gratitude and a few mindful breaths for me and my family. That's lovely. Thank you, Helen. And Josephine is asking, what is the response regarding the law of similar, etc.? If you are hot, you need hot to heal.
Well, if you're cold, you need hot to heal. So I'm not a homeopath. I haven't studied homeopathy, so I can't comment on that. But I know that homeopaths, they use very diluted substances, so that may be where the difference is.
Anybody else?
I just wanted to make a comment that Eleni just said about ginger when someone mentioned about ginger, because I often have been having ginger in the morning because I thought that ginger was very good to stimulate the gallbladder and also the liver, and that's what I've been doing. And it's interesting that she commented that not to have it on an empty stomach, to have it either while you're eating in combination with other herbs or after eating. I just think that.
Or if you're going to have food straight afterwards.
Yes, I'll be having food straight away. I'll be having breakfast.
That's fine. I think that's fine. But people who have strong digestion, good digestion, they can eat stones, it's fine. But if someone doesn't have strong digestion, then they need to be very careful.
That's interesting. Really interesting.
Another question here from Andreas. Please mute your mics if you're not speaking. We're getting some background noise. Yeah. What are easy ways to find out the taste or type of an individual person? That's maybe a theme for another workshop, but if you want to say something about that, Eleni.
Yes, it is a theme for another workshop. There are some hints. So if someone is tall and thin and always thin, they usually have more of air and ether in them. They're more vata people. People who are overweight could be more kapha, although they could be vatas who had an accident and stopped moving. So that's why I'm saying it's complicated. People with red hair and blue eyes and medium build and medium shoulders, they are usually pitta. Unfortunately or fortunately, most of our leaders and top people are pitta people. So, curly people with curly hair sometimes are more vata. So air element. But shoulders might be a good way of figuring out someone. So medium shoulder length and neck is pitta. Wide is kapha, and not wide. Narrow is vata.
Okay, and Lisa is asking, what is a calming food or herb for troubled digestion? Again, that's for the digestion workshop.
Chamomile?
Chamomile.
Yes.
And Helen is asking if you would recommend any particular Ayurvedic courses or introductions to Ayurvedic medicine.
If Helen who?
Helen Thomas.
Helen Thomas, Helen, if you could email me. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, that's about it, I think. So to wind up, I'd like to thank Sumi for facilitating the breakout room, and Sarah for her presentation, and Eleni for a wonderful presentation about herbs and taste. And just to reiterate that in Harmony in Health, we're trying to build a multi-discipline team to approach this question of looking at health through the prism of harmony. So we're keen to cooperate with people from different backgrounds, different disciplines, who want to explore with us, really. So if you're a practitioner of some sort, or you have some special interest or study and you'd like to become involved, then do get in touch with us. Okay, so thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you at the next event.